All right, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great event on tap with some very, very smart people. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on demand. Following today's webinar, we'll be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for any of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use that that question and answer interface on your question and answer tab on your interface and submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have a very interactive chat feature on the interface, and we encourage you to shout out your comments, your suggestions, your questions, whatever you want to share with us via the chat. Please feel free to do so. At the end of today's webinar, we are also doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. You'll also see at the top of the chat a great handout that we're offering during today's presentation, and we're going to have some follow-ups post-webinar that will be coming your way by email, so you can keep an eye out for that. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Autodesk's digital first journey with AWS Lambda and Armory. Our speakers today are Srirang Mogi, who is the Senior Software Architect at Autodesk, Shyam Maniadev, and I know that I butchered it and I apologize for that, Shyam. He's Cloud Architect at AWS, and Zach Smith, who is the Technical Team Lead at Armory. Welcome to all 3 of you gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today. Srirang, I know that you are going to be kicking off today's conversation, so I'm going to put myself on mute, take myself off camera. Let's get right to it.
All right. Thank you, Charlene. Super excited to take you on this journey. My name is Srirang Moge, and as Charlene introduced, I'm the software architect at Autodesk. Every time you open your eyes, you're amazed by nature's wonders. The Mount Everest, the Niagara Falls. Nature has created some amazing wonders for us, and nature supports us too. It collaborates in many different ways to create these amazing formations. But juxtaposed and hidden, not hidden in plain, and they are in plain sight, are human imaginations, human creations, and humans have created and collaborated at massive scale to create these wonderful creations. Productions like the Sydney Opera, the Burj Khalifa Tower. We also collaborate to create just wonderful creations like this. The car that you see out here, the car bodies, the escalators, everything that you see around, the earth moving equipment, the world moves, the people collaborate and build these amazing things. So most of these images that you see here are the industries where Autodesk products get used. You can pretty much say that every place that you see, you can use Autodesk products to imagine, design, and create these wonderful experiences. You might have seen movies like Avatar, and though that particular one was also created using Autodesk product. So, next slide. Autodesk started its journey about 30 years ago with a product called AutoCAD. That was a small product, but was very much useful in serving a niche in creating and drafting drawings. And this was based on Windows 3.1. And slowly the market grew for Autodesk, and it entered into different industries like for architecture, for creating manufacturing 3D designs and car bodies and whatnot. But soon we saw that there was a force that was taking us to the cloud. Cloud offers us delivery to wherever the users exist. Not the desktop delivery of desktop products was becoming more and more difficult. So Autodesk had to get into this digital transformation. We all saw this cataclysmic event that is happening around us, which is the pandemic. And this has forced most of the companies to deliver value and software through the cloud. So with these forces coming together, Autodesk also embarked and it started helping its customers on its digital journey. And in this journey, we picked Amazon AWS as its partner for the infrastructure as service and platform as a service. And that relationship has matured amazingly well. And if you look at what our customers are asking for, that they want to use the software in the region, in the place where they live. There are compliance-related opportunities. There are compliance-related issues. So you have to deliver the software wherever the customer lives, wherever the customer exists. So there are data residency and compliance controls that need to get met, and data privacy issues too. So regionalization becomes a big, important opportunity issue and also an opportunity for Autodesk. And Autodesk had to choose a partner that would deliver this at scale, especially the deployment pipeline. So we chose open source Spinnaker as our choice for delivering software. And Armory comes as a partner that can deliver this at enterprise grade and at enterprise grade software support quality too. So those forces together are super important for us in our making of the choice to deliver the software where the customers live. Autodesk chose to develop a offering called Cloud OS. It's an internal offering with which all these industries that you saw can use a single pipeline, single technology to deliver the value to the customer whichever regions they exist. All right, over to you, Charlene.
All right, great. We have the first of 2 poll questions that I'm going to be pushing out to the audience right now. The question is, where are you in your digital transformation journey? You can choose from still in the data center. We started our cloud migration, already adopted cloud for some workloads, all in, we're all in the cloud, or we're still figuring it out. The poll is located over in the polls tab. You can go ahead and make your choice. And I'll leave this polling question open for a little bit. And Zach, I'm going to turn things over to you. You can go ahead and start your presentation and we'll circle back on the polls when you're done.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlene. So I just wanted to quickly talk about this project that we worked on in collaboration with AWS and Autodesk. And then maybe give a little bit more context on Spinnaker and plugins and cloud providers within that. So, looking at Spinnaker, there's a plugin framework that is a way that anybody and everybody can contribute either proprietary features or features that they think might be useful for everybody. And so, our plugins team developed it in a way so that, ideally developers can ramp up quickly and then start, getting to that custom business logic that they want to implement. In our case, there's a typical release cadence within Spinnaker for all of the open source code. If let's say that's on a quarterly basis or even like a bi-yearly basis, if that doesn't work for maybe a product that you're developing, then you can look at implementing it via a plugin so that you don't have to, wait on that release cadence. And then it gives you more flexibility in terms of managing that code base yourself. And then the nice thing about it as well is if there's a big enough use case that you think a majority of the community might be able to benefit from it, well, then we can actually go ahead and migrate that plugin into open source directly. Obviously, there's specific use cases for every company, but in this case, for the Lambda provider, we believe that is a key provider integration that is going to have benefit to not just Autodesk. And so while it's available via plugin, the end goal is to actually get that into the open source community and have a community that's able to actively contribute to that as well. So yes, plugins are a means of doing that. Plugins aren't just for large things like cloud providers. or those integrations, it can be as small as just maybe a stage for a particular provider. Let's say that you're deploying to ECS and you want to have some custom stage that does something cool. You can build a plugin to do just that. So plugins kind of range from, like I said, the cloud provider integration level down to maybe just a stage within Spinnaker. Then talking more about cloud providers, we, Armory and the Spinnaker community are always looking at what's next, right? Lambda being a newer provider to the community, but Amazon has 160 services or 170 and growing. I probably am way less now, but with these new services, there's going to need to be ways to deploy and deliver your software to them, and so if the community or if members of any companies that are out there, want to see a tool like Spinnaker have support for those integrations, then please reach out. We have an open source community on Slack that is pretty active, and so if you're interested in getting your integration, in Spinnaker, don't hesitate to reach out, and we can talk about it there. And then hopefully, we can all collaborate together and move forward and continue with what Sriwan was talking about with building what's next. But that's it from me. Let's go to the next polling question, I believe.
All right, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and close this first poll, and we'll take a look at the results of that one real quick. The polling question was, where are you in your digital transformation journey? Looks like the largest number of people, the largest percent, 33%, said they have already adopted cloud for some workloads. And 28% said that they are all in the cloud. And the third largest percentage, 17%, said that they're still figuring it out, while 11% each said they're either still in the data center or they've started their cloud migration. So those are some interesting results there. The second poll I'm going to send out right now. The question is, which cloud do you use for the majority of your workloads? You can choose from AWS, GCP, Azure, other, or not in the cloud yet. So go ahead and make your choice. I will put myself back on mute, send things over to Sham. He can go ahead and do his thing, and then we'll take a look at the poll results right before we get to the question and answer period. Sham, I think there might be something with your audio going on.
Yep. Can you
there
hear
we
me
go.
now? Okay, perfect. So hi, thank you for the introduction, Charlene. I'm Sham Maniadath. I work as a consultant with AWS Professional Services. And as part of this role, I work with various customers and help them with their cloud adoption. Sometimes that help is in the form of architectural advice. Sometimes it's in the form of like writing code. Some other times it's building prototypes and so on. In this particular engagement with Autodesk, what was done was building up, it was actually writing code and delivering things into the open source community. And this was basically building a plugin for supporting Lambda in Spinnaker. I'm going to do a demo of this plugin as we go along. And just to make sure that people are aware of Spinnaker, we won't go into too much detail around Spinnaker, but we expect that it's a continuous deployment tool that is pretty popular in the community for deploying to various clouds. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, walk through some of the features that were built, talk about like the building blocks that are available, how some of them have been stitched together, and then give you some ideas on how you can stitch together something for your own requirements for deploying Lambda. So I'm going to share my screen at this point. Is my screen visible now? Can you see my screen? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So
yeah, sorry.
No worries. Okay. So this is my Spinnaker installation. It's as you can see, this is the introductory screen. I have a bunch of applications in here. I'm going to work with that. Just to give a background, typically Spinnaker can be installed in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's running on a single box. Sometimes it can be run as like a Kubernetes pod, or there are various options, or run it on a bunch of different boxes together if you like. In this particular example, in this particular setup for the demo, what I have is I have this running on a single AWS machine, and I have some local SSH tunnels to connect to it from my laptop. It's just convenient from a developer point of view. Many times it's usually you run it inside of Kubernetes or inside of some VM that you have. Regardless, so this is what we have today. We have this applications tab, and then the Spinnaker, and I've created this application called Webinar. I'll introduce some of these things as I go. In general, to go into the background of Spinnaker, it's modeled as a whole bunch of microservices that work together to deliver like a continuous deployment tool. And these microservices, there are about 10 or 12 of them, and they do like point tasks, like something maybe like interacting with the UI, something maybe installing like things on the cloud for different providers, something maybe involved in security, and so a variety of different things. So they all are like stitched together to provide the experience. For the particular example of the Spinnaker plugin for Lambda, we made let me just this is there on the GitHub page. It's all like this is all the code it's all public code that we are demoing today. So feel free to download it, play with it. There's a README there for getting started with it quickly and such. So for the particular case of Lambda, we ended up modifying a couple of these adding plugins to a couple of these microservices. And to keep the analogy loosely, if you think of the MVC model, like model view controller, we ended up modifying both the model and the controller. So the model can be seen as a cloud driver. The view can be seen as deck, and the controller can be seen as Orca. So these are three different services that run in Spinnaker, and the plugin modifies some of these. Adds features to some of these microservices. As Zach pointed out earlier, the advantage of doing some of these things as plugins is primarily that you are on your own cadence. You can upgrade at leisure or at speed as you like. Many times you have like custom features that you don't want exposed to the larger community, and you want it personally for your own organization. So regardless, whatever the reasons. So for the purpose of this plugin, we ended up modifying as Orca and Deck as part of the plugin. And then we also made some changes to Cloud Driver, which are like more into the Cloud Driver system itself, not as a plugin. But those are the features that actually talk to AWS and deploy the Lambdas and such. So let's get into it and go into this application webinar. We have a bunch of different pipelines here. So at a high level, Spinnaker has a concept of applications. We saw 3 applications there, and each of those applications have pipelines. And pipelines are the basic unit. Pipelines are the basic unit with which you accomplish a deployment objective. In turn, each of these pipelines have a series of stages, and each stage can be seen as tasks that we as point tasks, which all together can be stitched together. In this particular example, so I'm going to start with a simple pipeline that I'm going to create. And I'm going to show you some of the features there which correspond to our Lambda plugin. So as you can see, our demo live is the new pipeline that we have created, and each pipeline has a concept of stages. And these stages are you can think of it as like a series of things that you do to accomplish your objective. Now, what we have done in this plugin is we have added a bunch of stages in here. You can see this here: Lambda deployment, Lambda delete, Lambda invoke, and Lambda route and update code. So these are 5 stages that have been added by this plugin. It's fairly easy to install these plugins. Like basically, there's a place to drop them in the plugins directory of your install, or if you want to build these and do it, that's fine too. Either ways, once it's correctly installed, you basically have these stages. I'm going to start with introduce each of these stages and then show you how they can be stitched together. So I'm going to start with the first basic one, which is the Lambda deployment. And this is the basic stage that used to create and deploy a Lambda to the AWS ecosystem. I'm not going to, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different fields here that correspond to like all the things that a Lambda deployment may involve. I'm not going to type all of this in front of you, but we'll go to a different pipeline where I have all this typed in. But just to briefly overview, right? You can, in Lambda, you can, in Spinnaker, you can deploy to multiple accounts. You can choose what region you want to do it, and then a whole bunch of things like, function names, tags, and all these various details of what comprises a Lambda. To be clear, many of these fields are like moving targets, like every few weeks or ever so often. What happens is we introduce new fields to the deployment process. So to somewhat future-proof it, even though these UI elements exist, you can also actually, go and modify these as JSON and have different set of values in here. So in case new elements are introduced, you can put them in there as well. With that, so that's the basic idea of deploying a Lambda, a whole bunch of fields around defining your function names and the alias names and runtimes and all the things that, if you're familiar with Lambda deployment, should be should not be particularly new to you. So I'm going to look at one of these things that I've already filled up the values for, and I'll show you what these things are and just quickly run them. Let's see. And as I'm running them, I'll speak to some of the other features of it. Now, many times, so in this particular example, what we are doing is we're starting with some kind of, the first stage is this Lambda deployment, and before that we have a configuration. That's for this, which works well in a demo situation. But many times that's not exactly how we start this. That's not how we start this. It's usually triggered by some other step, like a GitHub commit or like a build process, some Jenkins, so something triggers this. So it's quite possible that we can have some external system do this. Yeah, so it's quite possible that we can have some external system trigger this Lambda and start the process rather than something so straightforward as just typing this ourselves. The other thing to know is also that Spinnaker has the concept of templating using its own templating language based on spell, S-P-E-L. So things like these function names and stacks and all of these can be inputs from some other system by using some syntax of some sort, double curly brackets and such. So these things don't need to be hard coded as we do this. So that's the simplest thing that we do, which is just installing a Lambda. And I'm going to go ahead and start this. It's going to take some time to. It's going to take roughly a minute to run, but we'll just let it do its thing. We'll let it do its thing. So that's the basic deployment of the Lambda. And many times, what happens is in a typical environment, you have something like what is it? On a daily basis, somebody is committing code and it's getting into GitHub, and that's what triggers the build. And in turn, you want to update the Lambda at AWS. For that, we have different stages. This is the update code stage. In fact, this was a contribution from some pull request from somebody who's been using this. So good to see that at least a few people have downloaded this and played with this independent of Autodesk and us. So in this case, all that we do is simply, fill the details of the name of the bucket and where the source code is. So an external system may have updated the source code and uploaded the run some tests and uploaded it into the S3 bucket, and we can trigger off the build for this. And we can trigger off the build for this and deploy the Lambda. Meanwhile, and deploy the Lambda. So that's usually what is done on a daily basis. And what happens after the Lambda is many times, especially in a production environment, you don't want to immediately start pointing traffic to this Lambda. We use, you may want to do some tests, or you may want to, look at the performance, or point traffic partially at the Lambda, a variety of different choices that you have. And that's what I'm going to show here with this after this update code is done, so you can route the route traffic to this Lambda in different ways. For this, we primarily use something called aliases in Lambda. So each time there is a build of the Lambda and a deploy, it automatically builds up the version number. So so to begin with, if we started with version 1, and on a particular day, if there are 5 code updates and corresponding deploys, so you'll bump up versions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So that's how it goes on. The version number, and we use aliases to point to these version numbers, and in turn we the events or the the SQS events or the SNS events or the step functions, etc., can point to these particular aliases so that the traffic is begins to flow into these. In this particular case, for example, I have a simple alias called a demo alias, and what I'm saying is that, you can point the traffic using simple strategy, that is, point all traffic from this Lambda using to the newest function version. So what this does is immediately after updating code, like you got a new version, let's say version 7, it starts pointing this at the newest function version. This is useful in cases where you're in a test or a staging environment. You have a daily build and you immediately want it to point at this latest version. It works great for that, and that's where we expect this to be used. There are other ways to do traffic as well. Many people may choose something like a weighted deployment, because an alias can have multiple versions that are targeted at it. Up to 2. So you can say something like, hey, point like 10% of the new of 5% of the traffic at the newest version, and keep the previous version at about 95%. So this way, when a Lambda is deployed, especially in a production place, in a production situation, you have some traffic pointing at the newest. You can run your tests and such, and then stitch together another stage where the traffic goes to 100 for the newest. Or if it fails, we kind of step back and delete the newest version and point all traffic at the previous version. So various ways to stitch these together, and I'll show some more of these examples of how we have put these stages together. So that was update. I'm not going to save this for now. Meanwhile, the first one, the simplest Lambda deploy, it finished 4 minutes ago, and we should see a few new Lambda in our system, which we'll look at it in a second if that's interesting. The next thing, this way, the way we route traffic in a production environment is using aliases. Point some traffic at the new version of the Lambda, run some tests, figure out if as a team you really want to go to the latest version, if it is performant enough, if the tests don't fail, etc., and then go forward. Or if it doesn't work, or you're unhappy with the results, delete that version and move back to the old version. So there are multiple ways to accomplish that. In this particular example, I have like a list where we have updating code and routing to a test alias. The rest deleting and run your own tests against this. We provide some amount of support using invoking of Lambdas to run those tests. You don't need to use this directly. You can also run other stages in here where you can wait for a manual input and such after running your test. But again, so what this does is invoking against the test alias, you can point this you can have the system run some tests against this. In this case, just simply invoke the Lambda multiple times, say up to 5 times or whatever, and get you the results. This is again like a building block with which you can use the results of this to make your decision afterward. For example, in this case, I've put in this canary analysis. This is not a stage that's introduced by the Lambda plugin. Rather, it's something that's you could run your canary analysis in any way you like, and then make a decision whether you want to route back to the final alias or delete the latest version, whatever that may be. So those are some of the ways that you can you can stitch together these cases. In the case of canary analysis, in this case, this is not done within the Lambda system itself. It's done within the Lambda plugin itself. It's done externally, but I'll also show some examples where there are some rudimentary blue-green deployments that we have that can also be used. So just to continue on that, so that was with we have just as we kind of allowed that canary analysis do. Sometimes you want to, especially in a production environment, you want some human to actually make a judgment call whether to proceed or not. So of course, using the inbuilt features of Spinnaker, you can have some kind of a manual judgment where the pipeline will stop, wait for you to make a call whether you want to proceed or abandon, and based on the results of that call, either route to the final analysis or fail the pipeline. So many different ways of putting these various stages together and accomplishing the goals. This was just another one. Finally, one other thing. Meanwhile, we can, yes. Finally, the other thing that we want to talk about is what we have, this feature called blue-green deployment. What that allows us to do is, again, same thing. Once the code has been updated and you want to route using blue-green, we can give it some simple ways of invoking the Lambda, quote unquote, testing the Lambda, and only if those tests pass, change the traffic for that alias to the new version. Otherwise, just abandon that version. So in this case, for example, we have a function name, and we have we have some alias, and what we're saying is that the strategy is blue-green. So once the strategy is known to be blue-green, it has how do you want to check the health of this version? In this particular thing, we have only one single way, that is Lambda invocation. We've added one way of doing it, but if you want more ways, then that's something that can be easily added into this, like other methods of testing. So you can give it some kind of a payload artifact, make sure that the artifact, and then output artifacts say what are you expecting the results to be, and if the results are fine, then go ahead and point traffic at this new version. Point the alias at the new version, and if it doesn't work, if it didn't work, then point it back at the old version or leave it as is. So that's our rudimentary blue-green deployment by just doing invocation and testing the results. But of course, you can also do fancier things using the Lambda invoke. Using the invoke method. So in this case, what we do is it's just simply going to invoke. This stage is simply going to invoke the Lambda so many times, with a timeout of 20, and just give you the results. And it's up to you to in your own stage. It might be maybe you have a webhook in here that can look at the results, or maybe you can look at CloudWatch or other logs to see the performance in a separate thing, and then give it a go or no go. That's this is the building block to just invoke it multiple times, and just invoke it multiple times and get you the results, and then have the user make a call on what they want to do with that results. Do they want to route to the final alias, delete the version? Is it a good? Is it not good? And that many times may not be automated. It might also be that you have the human intervention to say yes or no. So that's yet another feature with respect to invoking and productionizing your Lambda deployment. Yes, productionizing. One other thing that I want to touch upon is most of these things, even though they're very UI heavy, and you're filling a lot of these details in the UI form, most of them are also configurable as they're all written as API first. They're all based on JSON. So many times, many installations may use the JSON directly and update the JSON and not use the UI, but be able to invoke the backend services directly via the JSON. So this allows for a more clean, if needed, like infrastructure as code system where you can check in the JSON into GitHub or like wherever you store your infrastructure. At the same time, it's also the case that you don't need to type in all these function names and such. These might all be inputs from some kind of configuration. The configuration might have a bunch of parameters that are inputs, and then the deployment stage may use those inputs as use those configuration parameters as inputs. So you're not like hard coding all those names for a single particular deployment. So a single stage like this can be used for a variety of deployments for all your lambdas. For example, you may be knowing that like all your lambdas correspond to a certain region and a certain runtime and S3 bucket. So you can create one pipeline for all of them and manage that in a single go. So that's another feature that I think in a production environment people are likely to use quite a bit. One other thing that I want to touch upon is finally these when these execution details. What happens at the end of the deployment is it comes up with a bunch of outputs such as this function name and function on. All these are also accessible programmatically. So subsequent subsequent stages can refer to these variables from previous stage, the outputs of variable state, and make scripting easier. For example, when you use the function name in stage 1 and in stage 2 use this function name without having to hard code that also as part of the stage. So those are like some of those building blocks that we have for the deployment. We went over like things like the first is deploying the entire Lambda, which many times is done sometimes it's done in an external system like CloudFormation or the CDK or Terraform or whatever, and you don't you use Spinnaker for your daily deployment needs. So in which case you may not use deploy, but you will use a daily code update. So that's the first thing is being able to update the code on a daily basis. The second thing is we went over aliases. So the first thing, being able to point aliases at the latest version, or mixing and matching 10% of the traffic on one go and 90% of traffic another, and then do some canary analysis and decide what you want to do with the results of that of the new traffic shape. Then of course, being able to invoke lambdas and make decisions based on the results of that invocation, and some elementary blue-green deployments. The blue-green deployments based on invocation, looking at the results, and deciding at the end of it whether it's appropriate to go ahead with deploying to production or not. And finally, of course, we can also delete the lambdas. That's something that I didn't show. Lambda delete. So of course it has you can delete the function, or you can delete the entire function, or specific versions of it. It may be something the newest one just because something failed, or older than n, very useful for an active daily build environment where there are builds happening every day. So you just want to maintain the last 10 versions or something older than n, or define provide version number, all function versions. It's going to delete everything. So a bunch of things around delete to manage the life cycle, especially in a development heavy environment where people are checking in code pretty often, and those version numbers keep bumping up. So that kind of concludes a whole bunch of these stages that we've added for the plugin. These stages, as you saw here, can be stitched together in various ways to provide the experience that you need. Some of these stages are useful just by themselves. Many times you need to combine them with your own stages, manual inputs, or your own webhook based checks, or sometimes it might be just baking in, waiting for 30 minutes, whatever those mechanisms may be. So that's kind of a introduction to all of these features. I'm really hoping that more of you can download the plugin, try it out, send pull requests. Like I said, one of those update code was and we have had already a few people using this and send pull requests. So clearly, at least some people have found it useful. Looking forward that more of us doing that. The code is all there, and this, I think, it'll be part of the handout. There's the Spinnaker plugins GitHub lab where this plugin is available. It has two components, one for Deck and Arca. The README has various details on, how to, the README has various details on, how to build the thing and such. But given that they're individual microservices, they all build pretty nicely. That's all I have for now. And hopefully this has been a useful introduction to some of these deployment features. And happy to take questions around this plugin and such in the next 20 minutes or so.
All right, great. Yes, we are about 20 minutes to the top of the hour, so we have plenty of time for question and answer, folks. Before we do dive into it, though, I do want to let you know the results of the polling question that we had open. That question was, which cloud do you use for the majority of your workloads? Most folks, 58%, said they use AWS. And the second largest number was 27% who said Azure. And then we had 8% who said they're not in the cloud yet. And we had even 4% for both GCP and other. So there you go. Kind of interesting results. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and dive into the questions we have received so far. But as I said, there is plenty of time for question and answer. So if you have a question for any of our speakers, please just go ahead and put it on into the question and answer tab, or you can put it in the chat tab. We'll move it over for you, no problem. Okay, first question. Why did Autodesk choose to use Armory Spinnaker over native CD services provided by AWS?
Good question. I think the main important thing is we are aligning ourselves with open source big time, because if you look at in Spinnaker, there is active participation by Google, Netflix, and many other Salesforce and many other companies. So why swim against the current, actually? And that was the choice how Spinnaker was, and helps us deploy all over the world. And and Armory offered the best-in-class enterprise-grade scalability and support. That was super important for us. And this partnership has been going on for the last over almost a year now, and we've been very thankful for our partners like AWS, Amazon, and Armory, both.
Excellent. All right, great. Next question here. What other AWS services would you like to deploy but can't today?
I think Spinnaker mostly is now taking care of compute side, which is EC2, ECS, Lambda with the plugin. But we want to deploy even managed infra, like databases, queues, and whatnot. And that is an area where I think, because if you look at it from the service owner's point of view, there's compute and a whole bunch of other resources. Mm-hmm. So together are the concerns. So that's where we will go. But before that, I think the blue-green, the canary, the metric-based canaries is super important for us, because you really want to dial slowly up the traffic. You don't want to just say, I deployed one canary, and boom, the rest of the traffic is now on to the new deployed software. We slowly want to ramp it up. Really, that's the A/B testing we would want to do in a metric-based, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, folks, if you have a question, please go ahead and use that question and answer tab and get it on in. Next question, what would you do differently if you were doing this today?
No, I think what we would do differently is really align with the best, I would say, and early on. Don't waste time. Actually, I know you would identify your core values first. I mean, our core competency is about helping users imagine, design, and make. So focus on that, and because there are many others who are best in class, like Amazon and Armory, they're best in class. You can definitely would want to do your own prototypes and create your own deployment automation. but go with the best in class, identify the partners and align with them early on, actually.
Excellent. All right, next question here. What was the biggest surprise that came out of this project for you?
I think the biggest surprise was, even in the pandemic times, how awesomely we collaborated over remote too. I mean, we had a phone call that just run almost started once in 2 weeks and just went on like once in a week and 3 times a week. And awesome software got built that was critically, useful for our service owners. So the Lambda, and we also developed one more piece, which is the dynamic accounts plugin, which essentially can create a account on the fly also in AWS. So I would say we were very surprised by the collaboration and the results that we got.
That's great, especially, to your point, during the COVID times when everybody was working from home and sheltering in place, the level of collaboration is always so important. So that's really great. What were the biggest benefits that you've experienced as a result of the project?
As a result of this, Lambda is key. Serverless is where this world is going. So doing this the right way was super important. And again, so that's needed by a whole bunch of services within Autodesk. And the next one was the account registration, because you really don't want any manual toil in creating accounts and whatnot. So these are super important for us to open up new regions, and we are aggressively seeking out. We have a regional strategy actually, and our customers are asking for these products and services within those regions. So we definitely are lining up the right way.
All right. Well, speaking of regionalization, how far along are you into that? And when do you expect it's actually going to be done?
I think we are about 80% done with that, 80 to 90% done with that. We'll start opening it up pretty soon, this quarter as well as in the coming quarters.
Okay. All right. Just a quick reminder to the audience: if you've got a question for Zach or Sham or Shurang, please go ahead and use that question and answer tab. Get them on in. We still have plenty of time here. Okay, next question. We've heard a lot about blue, green, and canary deployments today. So how much safer are deployments when you use those methodologies?
Oh, clearly, they are the industry standard. Provide the insurance that you're not deploying a TED 11 in production. So blue, green is definitely important. So is canary. And, we want to go for beyond that to metric-based canaries. So there's some work to do, but definitely blue, green, and canary-based. These are standard strategies that best-in-class deployments use.
All right, great. Next question here. How does Autodesk feel about using open source technologies like Spinnaker? Was that a strategic decision to use OSS or off-the-shelf software versus a proprietary, or open source, I should say, versus a proprietary solution?
I think earlier we used to love to develop our own tooling, but all that is gone now because we align with the best in class, which is most of the time coming from the open source community, actually. So this is where we look for the most now. And we identify the best in class partners and we go with them.
Excellent. All right. We have a couple questions left here before we are done with question and answer. Next question. I've heard Autodesk say they take a customer-centric approach to building products. So how much of the of the decision-making process was driven by customers' needs, and how did that get prioritized at the company level, as this is a huge change?
Great question. I think in today's world, you better be listening to your customers, and there are many factors and most of these customers are asking for very similar things, no matter which region they are coming from. Mm-hmm. There might be just some compliance related or regional needs, and they can be identified and coded up to. But most of the times, Autodesk is super customer-based company. And we listen to our customers. There are many listening sessions. We have a Autodesk University that happens once in a year where we invite all users from all over the world to come in. This happens in Las Vegas just 1 week before the AWS reInvent, where we actually get face-to-face with the customers and listen to their needs. But this is something that happens all throughout the year. And decision making, actually, there are many times, it's just about what is the biggest challenge that the customers are facing. Not just the customers are facing, what the planet is facing now, whether it's green buildings or less carbon. Those are the big challenges too. So we put everything together and that then align, strategize to prioritize these things. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Let's see. I think we have one more question here. How has this transformation helped with your reach globally? And what are some of the challenges or learnings that you've come up with related to the management or governance of services?
I think the collaboration went really well, really well, beyond our expectations. We, as I said in this chat too, that we are developing something of a product called Cloud OS. We call it the Cloud OS, and we are using Spinnaker and all the tooling that we have developed so far. So Cloud OS is the one that is going to reduce the toil from all the service owners. So service owners, no matter in which industry it is, media and entertainment, manufacturing, or construction, they all will adopt Cloud OS. They are adopting Cloud OS. And with this, we can shoot them in any region. Wherever their customers are demanding them, we can shoot them. You want to go in Japan? Yes. Australia, wherever it is, or any regional compliance that you want to do. So we can now abstract it and make it a single point of, so where we can do evidence collection, we can do compliance with hardening standards, patch-based rollout. All that can be automated, and the service owners can just focus on their own things, which is developing awesome software for the customers.
All right, that's great. All right, that is all the questions that we have so far, but I'm going to leave the question and answer tab open for just a few more minutes to see if we get any stragglers in. And while we are waiting to see, just a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, or if you just want to watch it again, you will have the opportunity to do so. We will be sending out an email after today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website, so you can always go look for it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. All right, doesn't look like we're getting any more other questions in. So before we close things out, just two quick reminders. First of all, we've got the AWS or Amazon gift card, $25 Amazon gift card that we're going to be giving away. We have 4 of them in just a second. But also a quick reminder that we have this fabulous handout in the handout section. It's a great paper on enhancing Spinnaker deployment experience of AWS Lambda functions with a Lambda plugin. So definitely download that, take it away. And then post-webinar, we are going to be giving or sending out to you, well, I won't be, but somebody from the organization will be sending out to you an invitation to sign up for an AWS Dev Day for training. So that's going to be happening in June. So they'll be following up with, you'll be receiving an email that can contain some information on that, as well as a case study that further details Autodesk's journey, and you'll also get early access to an AWS Quick Start to help you jumpstart your learning. So those are going to be coming out in additional emails after the webinar, as they'll kind of be trickled out to you. So so please look in your inbox for those over the next few days or weeks. Okay, real quick before we close things out, I do want to do that Amazon gift card, $25 Amazon gift card, 4 of them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. The first winner today is Ron F. Congratulations, Ron. Our second winner today is Manuel A. Congratulations, Manuel. Our third winner today is Maxime N. Congratulations, Maxime. And our fourth winner today is Margaret F. Congratulations, Margaret. We'll be following up with all four of you via email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. And if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder, because sometimes they do drop in there. So, all right. So with that, I do want to thank the audience for joining me today. And I do want to thank Sham and Zach and Srirang for a great presentation. I love the demos too. I'm just such a huge fan. Anybody who joins my webinars knows how much I love the demos. So thank you for a great demo. And it was a really, really fascinating presentation hearing about how Autodesk is using AWS Lambda and Armory. So good stuff all the way around. Thank you to all three of you for your time and your expertise today. Really do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for joining us today.
Again, I do want to thank the audience for joining me as well. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.